I deal and dabble with plants, it's not just the plants that are why we're here today, but it's the tiny little guys, the insects, the creatures, the animals, nearly all of them much smaller than us, and on a different scale. And as a result, we tend to overlook them. They're splat on the windscreen. Some of you may have encountered the talk by David Attenborough in which he speaks about how when he used to travel, insects would cover his windscreen, and those have largely gone. And I've experienced that myself and questioned this radical decline. Sometimes only 25% of the insects are remaining in terms of abundance, and yet they continue to decline. So that's that, and then simply to celebrate. And when I consider insects and tiny creatures, I like to put myself in their feet, if you will. And these are absolutely brimming with tiny hairs. Nearly all the small insects and creatures are. And just to think how, while our own hairs seem to have very little utility for sensing, when you're that size with tiny hairs, they sense so much more than we do. And they're so much more in touch with the environment, and thus are subject to things such as radiation that we're relatively inured to, perhaps microwave radiation. And thus, we overlook once again these things. They're the first to go when pollution hits, things like that. So why I'm here today is not to decry the loss of habitat, but to see a way forward for ourselves, for Cape Town, the city of Cape Town, and South Africa, and even beyond. And you here are here to present your little part of that puzzle piece. If I may, can I borrow your glasses? No, not necessary. I want to read just two little fragments that I came across from Robin Wall Kimmerer's Braiding Sweetgrass. And she says, "The earth was new then, when it welcomed the first human. It's old now, and some suspect that we have worn out our welcome by casting the original instructions aside. From the very beginning of the world, the other species were a lifeboat for the people. Now we must be theirs. But the stories that might guide us, if they are told at all, grow dim in the memory. What meaning would they have today? How can we translate from the stories at the world's beginning to this hour so much closer to its end? The landscape has changed, but the story remains. And as I turn it over again and again, Sky Woman seems to look me in the eye and ask, in return for this gift of a world on the turtle's back, what will I give in return? It is good to remember that the original woman was herself an immigrant. And so many of you find yourselves immigrants. You find yourselves not sure of your place in the world, but I can tell you your place is here. Your place is now, and wherever you are. The Sky Woman came here with nothing but a handful of seeds and the slimmest of instructions to use your gifts and dreams for good. And that's why I have here, City of Dreams. Our first speaker, please, is Philippa. Thank you so much. Diane.
Diane.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So I'm going to put on Lynette's talk. Is that right?
Yeah, if you can put it make it like a slideshow,
Sure.
if you could.
Now, Lynette is from Friends of Pinelands Wildflowers. Yes. And I'll let you add it.
Okay. So I'm Diane from Friends of Pinelands Wildflowers. The few others here tonight, and I was speaking earlier, and I must say I feel a bit like an imposter in this gathering because we are not botanists. And yeah, so and I'm going to be talking about quite parochial stuff, which is just like, you know, our little suburb and the concerns in our little suburb. But I think, in a way, what we're struggling with here probably has quite a lot of resonance with struggles around the globe of people trying to preserve something of what used to be there in their urban environment. So we are just a very small group of Pinelands residents who are passionate about the wildflowers that are struggling to cling on to the verges and islands and parks in Pinelands. And of course, along with them, the insect life and bird life and so forth. And we kind of came together as this loose group, which we then later called Friends of Pinelands Wildflowers, just as a WhatsApp group, and we've like had a couple of meetings, and we're sort of trying to figure out where do we go from here. And largely what we've been doing since we got together as a group, which was pretty much at the beginning of spring, is just in quite a crisis mode, trying to tackle the mowing problem, and to a lesser extent, not because it's less serious, but the weed killing spraying, which happens a bit, not as much as the mowing. And some of the we sometimes feel quite despondent and hopeless, and like we're fighting a losing battle. And some of the frustrations that we've experienced in this short time that we've been trying to work together is one, a serious polarization within the Pinelands community about the mowing issue. We're very much in the minority. Most people are very much in favor of mowing for a variety of reasons. You know, quite a lot of them just like the neat look. Some people say criminals hide in the long grass. Other people are worried about their allergies. There was one woman who complained that her Great Dane got lost in the long grass. And I think mixed in with that, there's also probably quite a lot of just lack of awareness, people who just don't see what's there and don't realize that within that vegetation there are a whole lot of gems. So it's a matter of trying to bridge that polarization in some way, to some extent with public awareness about what is there and the importance of trying to preserve it. Oh yes, we've got a few photos here. You see, we do have some lovely spots in Pinelands. I mean, I know it's quite a boring suburb, but we have got some very pretty flowers. And then, you know, another sort of problem that we've been knocking heads with is just the sort of bureaucratic process of the whole mowing thing. You know, at one stage we felt like we'd had a bit of a win, because it seemed like there was you know, no mowing going on, really anywhere. And we thought, fantastic, our little group has, but actually the reason why was because there was a contractual dispute with the mowing contractor, and they couldn't appoint a new one until that had been resolved and they'd been properly terminated and so forth. And in fact, we got a bit of a bad name in that process, because whilst we're not trying to say nowhere must be mowed, we were quite an easy scapegoat to be told, it's because of it's the flower people, that's why it's the suburb looks like chaos. But the unfortunate upshot of that is that now the new contractors have been contracted to do X number of mows that should have started earlier in the season but didn't because of this hiatus due to the contract. So they are now mowing. They are going to they have to contractually do their number of mows. So they are mowing when there's that much vegetation. They are mowing it so that there's basically just sand. So that's another issue. Some of the contractors that the city uses just seem to have no sensitivity at all to mowing. So it would be that kind of thing, just an army of these sort of brush cutters coming in and just mowing few lobelias sitting in this short grass that really could just be left and look so much better until we have nothing but sand. It's like on the Juliana Veld, one of our members was talking to them about the fact that the trees were getting ring-barked from the mowers. And apparently that can, to some extent, be alleviated by changing the velocity of the brush cutter when they're mowing around the trees or whatever. But they can't be bothered. You know, it isn't something that they're just doing their job as quickly and efficiently as they can. I mean, we as a group have also had, a bit of a struggle just trying to figure out who to deal with, because we've got a Pinelands Residents and Ratepayers Association, we've got a CID, we've got a ward councillor. They all kind of engage with us. We don't really know who's got any power, to halt the mowers. Because of this, the polarization within the community, they kind of give us a bit of lip service and say what they think we want to hear, but then equally they go to the mow camp and give them a bit of lip service and say what they think they want to hear. So it kind of feels like we just sit in a bit of a no man's land in terms of the local role players. And then, it just feels like there's a big disjunct between the city's policies and the sort of highfalutin agreements that they sign with Biodiversity Institute and Cape Nature and everybody, like setting out all their respective commitments to biodiversity within the city. But on the ground, that all just seems to get lost. So our little group has some long-term goals, one of which is to try and attain some sort of conservation status for a few pockets of land in Pinelands, which we know is going to be a long-term process. And part of that would be no mowing at any time of the year. So at the moment there are a handful of areas in Pinelands that are on the city's list of no mow between May and November. But when I walk on the Rondebosch Common, and really we are just like a stone's throw from the Rondebosch Common, I'm not a botanist, but I assume that the vegetation in Pinelands would be really much the same, if left to its own devices as it is on the Rondebosch Common. Now, the Rondebosch Common doesn't get mowed at all. So in November, when the mowing starts here, even on those patches, and you walk on the Common, you've still got quite a number of flowering plants that are not even getting a chance. There might not be those particular spring flowers that everybody feels need to seed, but there's bulbs and, all sorts that are not going to have a chance if we mow even in November. And it feels like a bit of a chicken and egg and chicken. Am I talking too long, David?
No, I'm just sorting this out.
Okay, I won't be much longer. A bit of a chicken and egg and chicken, because it feels like in order to get some sort of conservation status, we'll have to show a certain level of biodiversity. But until the mowing stops, how do we do that? So that's something that we need to find out about, work on, get advice. So we're really looking for people with knowledge to help us, on things like how to appropriately try and repopulate areas so that their biodiversity can reach a level where they have a hope of getting some sort of conservation status. How to deal with the guinea fowl problem. We've got a proliferation of guinea fowls in Pinelands at the moment. There used to be some, now there are lots. People feed them. I don't know what the other causes are for so many, but I mean, they eat the seeds. They eat the seeds that are there anyway, and then they eat the seeds that people try and repopulate with. We have a vision of having like public information boards in a few of these places, just explaining the whole Cape Flats, Sand Fynbos, but just public awareness boards. We have to figure out whether we kind of become an NPO to raise funding. And then also just, a hope that even outside of those few key areas that we would want to concentrate on, in so many other places around the suburb, literally on the island outside my house, on the pavements as you drive, there are like pockets of plants. And if we could just try and get a more nuanced, sensitive approach to the mowing with some sort of a mapping and not just this kind of blanket, our contractors to do this and we're going to do it. So, but that's going to be a long-term goal. And our short and medium-term goals are to increase our own knowledge about what's growing in our suburb, to increase public awareness amongst our community about what's growing, so that when they look at it, they don't just see grass or weeds, they actually start to see what's there. Working out who's who in the zoo and who are the most effective people to engage with around what we want to achieve. Finding some champions in the city, conservation champions in the city who support our cause and are willing to work with us. And then networking with other people and organizations who have similar visions to ours and learning from them. And kind of just the belief that we are stronger together. Oh yeah, I've got to hand this over.
Are you going to flip the pics?
Yeah.
It's 58313. I sent it to you. Good afternoon, everyone. This reminds me a bit of Michael McIntyre's quip about Roman Day, when his 11-year-old decided to go to school, and he informed his parents that today's Roman Day. So the parent says, "Oh, okay. Yeah, I just need a scabbard and a sword and a tunic, and I'll be ready." "You mean now?" So the kid said, "Yes." "Well, who carries a scabbard, a sword, and a Roman tunic in there underneath their staircase?" Dave speaks to me about the middle of the day. Says, "Oh, well, maybe we mind being on a panel to discuss, I said, that sounds okay. Oh, but maybe just a talk as well." So, here's the talk. Go back a little while. Yeah, I remember this. This is quite a while back. So it's a bit like my life. It advances from quite theoretical to quite nitty-gritty stuff. So excuse the depths of theory.
Will you let me know when to...
Shall I do like this?
Snap your fingers.
Okay. That was a few years back, and I was invited to attend a corridor conference in Australia. Natural corridors, a bit new for this part of the world. But I was representing the plants. Most of the other delegates were representing fauna. So I had to think quite carefully what the importance of plants were to corridors, which we'll get onto that detail. Excuse the theory, but we'll get to them all down to earth in a little while. So that was a chapter. So there are linear remnants. We have road and rail reserves. Rail verges and power line reserves. That's sort of the wrong way around, because I just mentioned that the power line reserve that you alluded to a little while back. So let's go and say the linear remnants, that is to do with our roadside reserves. Basically, that's the Pineland story. Anyway, let's get on to the next couple. We also have sort of alongside roads, rivers, like the Constantia Greenbelts, predominantly along rivers, are all natural. Birds migrate, plants migrate, or no man's strips, like fire breaks, also different type of habitats, but generally natural avenues, not necessarily. So we have all those jargon terms. This is all very theoretical. I'm afraid it doesn't really touch sides at the sort of problems we face at the coalface right in our area around Southern Africa. Anyway, next. So what I did as part of an exercise was to map the remnant natural corridors and semi-natural corridors in the northern suburbs. For those people around here, that should have some meaning. If I can point, this is the Monte Vista Edgemead Power Line Reserve, which is chock-a-block with species and diversity and importance. So that's the next one. So we have importance. Why are they important? They're cross-sections of habitats that have been destroyed by farming, development. Certain types of habitat are more prone to being destroyed than others. High agricultural potential. Basically, our lowland habitats are the ones which are open season for that. So protection of vulnerable habitats, endangered species. Migration, we think of the fauna running up and down your natural corridors, and so on. We talk climatic change. We talk about them back then even. Climate change wasn't quite vogue. That was about 1990. Power line reserves. Sandplain Fynbos, natural heritage site, very nice back then. I did a study there. 200 meters wide, 73 hectares, quite nice and big. A lot of species, plenty red rated. Connection from the hill to the coast. That sounds theoretically wonderful. Reality today, not so good, I don't think. But anyway, let's look on the bright side, I guess. Connections with various others. Next, please. Photographs. Serura emula. Pretty well confined to this type of habitat. Next. Just we going on a movie, that's fine. Fauna. They either eat or pollinate, or a bit of both. That's how these guys get around. That's my level of faunal interest in corridors, I suppose. Okay, so there we are. This, Banksia cuneata, I think I've got the pronunciation right, in Australia, only found in roadside corridors in the Perth, Western Australia area. And that's a very beautiful proteaceous member, and it's a good example of what corridor conservation can do and the importance of it. Let's have a look at our home again. Back to our little map. Pinelands, I think, is sort of down this way. Anyway, carry on. This, Licodendron verticillata, increasingly getting confined to corridors, and of course they get cut, as we talked about. Bush cutting, not just mowing. Next. This little guy, Gangularis, confined to N1, N7 interchange virtually, either Stevens, that is about its distribution. That's all that's left, except in cultivation. That's an interesting color form. And very pretty varieties, meadow ridge, natural areas, very like Pinelands meadow ridge, very similar. Sand flats, rare habitat. Get these little gems. Now, coming back to my little home stretch, which I do this little distance through Zonstrahl Farm, once a day, twice a day. We don't realize that we see natural vegetation on the roadsides very frequently. 1 kilometer stretch.
Can you just orientate them slightly more?
Okay, yeah, this is north. Coming down the M3 Weinberg Hill here. Of course, we're now in the northern suburbs, so it's not. We're coming down at quite a little bit of a pace. There's a kilometer distance from here to this part, which goes through the old Zonstrahl Farm, but split into two by this highway. And there is, on each side, there's a verge. And so talking about parochial, I suppose we have to start somewhere, and starting at home is a good place, because we're talking road reserves, as Dave will no doubt point out. In South Africa, correct me if I'm wrong, road reserves are equivalent in area to the Kruger Park in size. Close to it. So I would like to think, and I would have liked to see the mayor here, because I think I've written to him about this story, that we become a flagship example of the protection of roadside reserves in this little stretch. Because as I know it, it's the biggest stretch in the Cape Peninsula of wildflowers that you can find. Okay, this is a little bit after the pines were cut down, and you got quite a nice regeneration. Can't really see this angle. Recovery, the substrate surprisingly was okay. It didn't seem to be too damaged because we found, carry on, nice little growth of Catholicum, Pterygodium Catholicum. That's the sort of thing we like to see on the roadsides. Many times a day you will see it. This beautiful scene. Little Morea tricuspidatas, beautiful shrubs, and quite late on, November. That's how I would like it to be and stay that way. Now, I'm not sure about this figure, Dave. It's 684 species, not 400. Okay, Greg Nicholson, I'm not quite sure who he was, but he's quoted as having walked from Port Nolloth to Cape Town, He picked up 684 species on the roadside verges. He's obviously going quite slowly, with his little press and everything. 64 were red rated. That's on just the road reserves. That's impressive. But I like to think my little kilometre here, I say mine metaphorically because I'm the one who goes and Dave and a few other Stuart, yeah. The three musketeers head out and try and protect this. 127 species observed in Zonstrahl, which are the credit of the landowners. They've kept parts of their farm natural. It's like a natural hedgerow. So it's a source of regeneration. 86 I've listed on that little strip of a couple of hectares. So that tells how important these remnants can be for protection. Not saying how long-term viable they are, but given the impact they've had, it's quite surprising. Red rated with the silver tree and a couple of others, and yeah, about hectares. Beautiful babianas, probably velosa, the blues are out, Aricea roella, all those to be found there in case people didn't believe me. We should have them all in a big collage, but it's quite a lot of work to do. You know, put 87 species on a single slide. That would have been the best way to deal with this problem. Your Hermania, you've flicked past your Hermania. Say a bit about Hermania. Okay, this little ground cover, beautiful ground cover, never used in horticulture, fantastic, grows so well, so beautiful. I'm going to plant it for the first time. Pioneer, Stratiola, one of them. Can't ask me quite which one in a hurry. Silver trees, they should be there, but not mowed in between them. They were getting onto the mowing side of stuff. We're talking mowing. Or bush cutting, even worse. So, now we look at this stretch. The base, at the end, we turn around to Constantia side, we see the stretch of lawn, mowed. Well, it was nice bush at one stage. I'm sort of convinced that people are making work for themselves by cutting the grass and getting rid of the fane bush so the grass will grow up again and they've got to recut it. And you get £5 a square metre if you're one of the bush cutters. And every year, the contractors change. Next one. So that's quite a good example of the diversity. This is just Zonstrahl Farm, Stuart. How rich is that vegetation? It gets bigger. Next one.
It's also a good example of the botanist in habitat.
Yeah, exactly. He's looking quite happy too. Yeah, and there is even dwarfed by this beautiful...
Lycaria?
Yes.
Raphnia.
Raphnia. I have my correctors.
And
Stuart.
this was one of the species cut down when they... Well, tell me
Correct.
about that.
We're getting there, yeah.
Okay.
That's where it could be. Conocopodendron, Conocopodendron. That's what it could look like. Anyway, next. Extinct Leucodendron grandiflorum. That could be rediscovered. The dormant seed, the landowners did have a burn to try and find out where there were seeds lurking there since about 1840. Nothing yet. And this little Ixie only found about an area from here to that door. And Stuart, we took some seed, next one. Pollinated seed, hoping to reintroduce it.
So this is something you guys could do as well in the Pinelands area.
Keep your seed. Yeah. You can keep seed, and you can speak to Kirstenbosch, Seed Bank. There are methods to preserve your local variants. They're different from the others. So forget about separate species. Each area has a different variant adapted to that particular character. First thing, Clifford Dawes, another conservationist. He says, and I spoke to him, I think we're going to make a conservation zone of that. Informal, like a gentleman's agreement. We haven't signed anything. England does that sort of stuff, wildflower area. Okay. We did that a few years ago, like that. Looked good for a while. All the signs whished away. That was about 3 or 4 years ago. Next one. Looking at recovery. Things recover well after pines. They don't really enjoy being bush cut or mowed. Next one. This tricuspidata. One of our signs says, okay, from November, it's okay to mow. These are out. Very little, rare little group there at the top of the end of what wasn't mowed. We're getting onto the cliff hanger now, or the road verge hanger. Next. That's me trying to plant some stakes, hoping to mark off with using stakes, pick up the rubbish. This is all now destroyed. Next. Road verge at a distance. I'm not quite sure what that was there for. Okay. Priority. Visual, touristic asset. Potential for positive genetic material, all very theoretical, can be used to connect formerly protected regions. Dave knows all about that. Casabayo, iSpot. Oh, I said iSpot. I naturally, so it shows a little bit dated in that one. Next one. So this is what it looks like after it's been mowed. Not nice. It's like a tombstone. This is when they say they know what a meter is. Distance from the roadside, 2 meters distance gets you there. Not sort of like that. That's after the council. I don't have any representatives of the council here. That's an idea of what, you know, a verge should be cut. Because we believe in a verge. It's sort of pullover site, maybe with a fire protectant, you know, next one. Or they do this. Senecio heterophoros. Benign invader from the Eastern Cape, carefully left, no everything in between. That's even worse. So what do we have next? Next one?
That's what's termed in the industry a parkland effect.
Yeah. So these are all the wonderful things. It's quite fancy language. Includes legislature. I don't know where we've got the legislature in the shape of mayor or the various powers that be. Knowledge. Existing while the road reserve servitude. That was, in Australia they might do it, not here. Nobody talks about, we destroy the one road verge, we're going to buy another strip and replace that one and revegetate. That would be the ideal. There's a room for improvement in this part of the world. At least they don't plant rubbish like Australia does, I suppose. Promote acceptable IEM procedure. Everybody shivers when you talk about that.
So where's a good place to end off?
But coming up.
Okay.
Go faster. Measurement. That's how we do road verges. Mighty, we measure. One little peg, next one. Cut there, straight. This is to preempt the full scale cutting of that slope. Next one. So we end up quite a neat little stretch down here, which to my mind looks okay. We look at that sign. Interesting, we move the signs up because they actually put the signs at the bottom. So we put it at the top next to those Moreos. Next. So we'll also look at the bottom of the garden, the part that abuts Constantia Road. That's also important. We did a little fringe mowing there as well. Very neat. Next. And again, also neat. And then we get that. Our fringe is mowed over. Dave asks them, right, Dave, this is getting back to real life right now. Man's there. He asks them, why are they removing that sign? Right? They've now demolished 3/4 or half. You took a point thing. They've just mowed it flat, despite me discussing with the official. I didn't manage to catch the guys doing it because they turned up on a Saturday to do it. No, Sunday. They're busy mowing. And they're a new contract team every year. That's your problem to start with. And they don't know who the boss is. The boss is, I don't know, somewhere in town in a high-rise building. Next one. Have a look up there. That part wasn't mowed. Here it is. There's the sign they put up. Flowers and bloom mowing to resume soon. July, August, November. We maintain that's not enough. Because these guys are flowering. Anyway, we put in pegs at one stage. Bollards, my solution. Wow. Bollards, wood. I spoke to the roads official. He says, oh, you might damage infrastructure. But they're all over the place. From the cement, they're this distance, I say 15 meters, with string between them, because in that way your cutters will see a straight line. So this is a problem. To end up on this rather sad note, RIP, Amacoris coranica, top of Weinberg Park, whether in a corridor, mowed, unmowed, or not, the Muti men got that one apparently, I'm informed. That's the best of a rainbow I can produce. To end on that rather ongoing saga, probably minority against quite a very determined majority, I'm afraid. So Pinelands is the start. This is just the beginning of communications. There are mistakes made, but the one thing is demarcate and apply. Sorry, that's the next generation. I'm afraid they look very white, but anyway. Forget about that. Dave, you've done your bit. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Clive.
Thank you. That's the story. I mean, derobe me.
Okay, you can swap the mics now.
That's strange. I'm afraid that's as good as I know how to do. Thank you very much, Ben Breedler. I think you'll explain yourself. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Functional optimality. That's all I do. There are 4 habitat functions: feed and breed and nest and rest. Habitat definition. Habitat consists of feed and breed and nest and rest and opportunity to suitably juxtapose in time and space for all life stages operating at above minimum viable population limits.
Sorry, can you speak a little slower? We're not too
I taught ecological design, and that used to be it. Definition of habitat. It is GIS compatible. I have yet to see a better feeding, breeding, nesting, resting. Suitably opportunities, suitably juxtaposed in time and space. That's the Fish and Wildlife Service definition. I add operating at or above minimum viable population levels. Because if you don't get to that point, you aren't getting anywhere. Okay. And that's really it here. These are going to stay. There's a real tendency to let people like landscape architects and other life forms take over natural sciences. If you don't at least subsume the functionality in the form, you might as well go home. Next slide, please. Quick and dirty. I'm going to show you, this is all you need to do. Now I'm going to say outright, I think I have the highest bee density and diversity of anywhere in South Africa in my backyard. And if I can do it, anybody can do it. You can go out and tilt windmills, but every suburban homestead has a garden, they have money, and they don't know what they're doing. If you just worked there and kissed off governmentally controlled land, we would get a lot more done everywhere. Next slide, please. Now, 70% of the bees nest in the ground. Nobody can find where they nest. Take a planter, turn the planter on its side, pack it with dirt, stick a bunch of skewers in there, wait for it to dry, pull the skewers out. You now have bee nesting colonies, and you have hundreds of them per planter. You'll see here, this is from Jim Kane. I'm not faking any of this. I'm not pulling it out of any body part. This is your typical depths that your bees go in the ground. 20 centimeters, there's 10, there's 10, you got enough to hold on to. Get a bunch of planters. I'm doing this on a sheep farm. Why? Karoo lamb. Why? Tastes better. What are we doing? These folks, they happen to be really good, extreme, balanced, 2,500 hectare heart of the Karoo farmers. They are doing these planters for pollinators. Okay, next slide, please. Now, again, I didn't show you there, but you could see quite a few of those holes are occupied. That's my garden dirt and my planters turned on its side to present a cliff face. That's all you need. Okay? The rest of the bees, the other 30%, are woody substrate nesters. If you're a horticulturalist, they tell you cut it off right above the internode, and lo and behold, you get 2 leaves come out. I say bullshit. Cut it off right below the internode, and now you have a nesting tunnel. You can take every plant in your garden and cut it that way. You will go out there and find pollen smeared on the end of it, a nice golden smear that says, we're working our butts off packing the babies in here. Again, it's cheap. It's something you would preferably throw away. Also notice down here, you want to take pictures. The new cameras, you can get a built-in focus stacking capability. You buy a third hand, it costs almost nothing. You cut these flower stems in two. Now you can count the percent utilization. Remember now, in a bee hotel, the females are laid first, the males are laid last, if there's space in the tube for males. When you buy a bee hotel, you're buying crap. They're all too short, they're all consistent of cute things. This is guaranteed. This is excellent plant, excellent post-use. These are pieces of newspaper. Go to the hardware store, buy some dowels. They start at 1 millimeter. The upper limit probably for the bees is somewhere around 10 millimeters. Cut it, wet it a little bit, roll it up around the dowel, wait for it to dry, pull the dowel out, stuff it in a PVC pipe. If you stuff it in 2 PVC pipes, then you've got ambient conditions around that. And Bob's your uncle. The other thing we do is, here's 50% growing, here's 50% cut. You can notice this is senescing, this is coming on. In another 2 or 4 days, we'll cut the tall part that's no longer doing any good. That way you have flowers 100% of the time instead of all or nothing all of the time. You're killing your bees, you're preventing the bees from occurring, quite frankly. So that's the nuts and bolts of that part of it. Next one, please. Foraging radius. These things, now let me also say here, this is fascinating to me. I found 5 papers. There was 2 women in Texas working on their PhDs. They had to find naturally occurring honeybee hives. 500-meter separation. Cow country, nothing but cows and more cows. And bees. 500-meter separation. I found 2 more papers, both done in Botswana. Hive separation distance in Botswana, 500 meters. I found one on Psychobos Nature Reserve south of Joburg, 500-meter separation. Me and my hiking buddy, when I can't believe this stuff, we went to Groenkloof. We located all the naturally occurring beehives, 500 meters separation. If they're Central Place Floridas, look at the break on the curve. 100% of them come out of one little spot. And if you look at the break on the curve, it's 250 meters. If you were designing habitat, you should be able to get acceptable conditions near optimal within 250 meters of the hive. Better stuff than that happens. When you go down here and start playing the rest of these bees, you're looking, the Germans now saying somewhere between 50 and 75 meters for the foraging radius from a bee bank. I'll guarantee it. It's just too good to not be true. Hive separation distance, my head's jumping. The honeybee keepers used to really jump my butt. Now I'm going to speak at their annual general meeting, and I'm going to speak on the non-honeybees. And I'm going to go into things like hive separation distance, 2 studies. I want to play one quick thing on 20 meters. Guess how long a cricket pitch is? 20.6 meters. Guess how long a baseball pitch is? 18.6 meters. My, what's between that? 20 meters. That is the distance at which you just totally stop having cross communication with diseases in beehives. It happens to be the outside range at which a U.S. football quarterback can reasonably expect the ball to be caught. Things go to hell at 20 meters. If you go to Africa and the elephants charge, they make up their minds whether to charge or not at 20 meters. Where do they break off a false charge? You can go in there and you see all these nice, out there, and they got their gun and they got everything. And the elephant comes up, and the elephant comes to a real screaming halt. At what distance? 5 meters. I can give you the numbers on 5 meters. It works from everything from gang warfare to elephants in Kruger Park in terms the standard distance for a broken charge, whether it's lions, elephants, what is 5 meters. Now, this is a separate part of the thesis. I didn't put it into this thing, but Koos Bootma said once upon a time he was laughing his butt off. He said it was the first new thing he'd seen in 30 years. But I can take you through the Olympic literature, I can take you through almost any sport, and 20 meters sticks out like a sore thumb. So does 5 meters, so does 20 centimeters. The wicket in cricket is 20 centimeters. Guess what the kill zone on a human is? 10 plus 10, there's your kill zone on a human, and an impala, and an eland, and only for a little bit more an elephant. 20 meters outside distance for projection of damage and force. Now, why am I diverging into that? Because it fits hand in glove with all the other numbers. And what I'm telling you, I've got, you can't do it cheaper than that. Here's the little thing so you don't suck the bug in. You go, put your finger over the end of it. This is my ampules. I can sit here with a pocket and I can collect all day long. Kill them with ethyl acetate. Here are bugs out of cucumbers. Who would think that Hyalaeus is a good in cucumbers? You won't find it in academic literature. This is from my yard. We got them, this is what we caught them with. Why am I telling you this stuff? I want you to quit trying to identify and start counting how many of who or where doing what. And I did not put the quadrat on here. It's 250 by 250. I've got a little thing you stick in the ground. You can hang it at any angle. My maid counts my bees, people. They go into Excel. I can tell you the time of day they go to work. I can tell you when they peak for the day. I have 53 square meter plots. This is why I say I really think I've got it by some body part that 53, let me get the other thing I skipped in here. I do not ever listen to a human about the bees. I go to the nurseries, here are the little dudes with their carts, and I say, take me to your bees. Without exception, they've always taken me to honeybees. I said, no, I want your real bees. And they look at me like I'm nuts. One of these guys had worked for Keith Kirsten for 17 years, and he saw then these little black dots flying around everywhere, and I said, that's your bees. His eyes did one of those things. Okay, I go, oh, we've got 600 native species in our indigenous nursery. You've got 6 to 10 that are worth taking home. And the reason I say what I do about my bees is I let those bees tell me which plants at the nursery I should buy. And they never lie. They will be there. I take it home and I put these side by side so I have 53 square meters of the highest pulling plants in this part of the world for everything except the honeybee. Now I count the honeybees to use them as a proxy. So I have a relative number between number of bees and honeybees for everything. Really ticks the beekeepers off because a lot of what's been written isn't true. Is it one more?
2 more.
Okay, yeah, there's my quadrat. This is, this bee, Hyalaeus, I think. This is a screw hole in the back wall of my house. My house was built in 1903. We painted it. I said, for God's sake, don't paint my damn bees. They painted my bees. This white patch is on the bees behind. They blocked the hole with their head or their tails. The other ones got blocked in. This little dude, just, if he turned around there, you see this on his tail. My point is they're everywhere. Cone Lurley was at the house. He walked in the hallway. I said, Conal, we've got boxes full of bees in the hallway. You get a cardboard box. You've got the little corrugations in the wall. You sit on the floor and watch, and here comes a little crystal ball flying straight at you. They are bringing in nectar and honey, crawling down the cardboard boxes by the hundreds, and they will leave a little bitty nectar reflecting light back at you off the outside of that. Point being, they're everywhere. They're totally manageable. Next slide, please. Bunny hugging and fish kissing, I get really frustrated. You're shooting a dead dog.
Because it was so qualitatively different to other gardens I've been to. And so I think we're going to get a little bit of an insight into that. And when I said to her, which organization are you affiliated with, her response was?
Nothing.
So
Nothing.
she's an example. I said, perfect, that's exactly who you want. Because I want people who are just on their own mission, doing their own thing. They don't need to be affiliated with any organization. They can do it themselves. So here we have it. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you, David, for inviting me and putting me after Ben, who I must admit I also agree. Honeybees are completely overrated, as I have got involved very much with the insect world. So if we look at the first picture. I am, just a housewife ultimately, who in 2014, my children became sort of fairly depressed. At that time, they were like 12 and 11. hearing all the negative doomsday scenarios of nature in the world and what was going to happen. So it was all very negative. They were very upset. We moved at the same time, so I decided to change things around, be positive. We were living in Cape Town. Drought was happening, so we got rid of all the exotics, reduced the lawn dramatically, planted most indigenous plants, and so here we have at 2024 a very mainly much more locally indigenous as well plants with no pesticides or fertilizers at all. And during lockdown, do you want the next pictures? I then had time, luckily I was at home with a camera and just having to feed my university children by that point in between their lectures and everything. I was out in the garden taking photos and really noticed that honeybees are, luckily, food for many other plants and many animals. But I also realized that there were other bees as well. So I gave myself a little challenge just to find out how many other bees there were in my garden, visited. So you can do the next slide. Mainly one, of course, was the social bee, the honeybee itself. It has wild nests, are very different to wild nests to the man-made hives, which perhaps we have quite a few in suburbia nowadays. And there you can see, even just on a krantz aloe, there were 3 bees, 3 different species there. And I have taken a lot of photographs of bees. I've had fun in the last couple of days looking through them all. And then the next thing is how many bees did I actually found, other solitary and social bees in my garden? 20. So this is the next slide. After 4 years, and I'm counting still. There you can see they are quite aggressive, the honeybee. They go towards other plants like this when they see another bee in them, and they always scare the invariably smaller social bees, solitary bees away. They, of course, as Ben was saying, they have very small cells in wood, twigs, or everything, and of course, and I have actually seen mine, the amygdala in the bulbs of my marsh lilies. They cover themselves, they have lots of hairs which are covered. Their pollination rate is much, much higher than the honeybee. And of course, they are evolved, though, to go to certain specific plants, of which they are ever in decreasing amounts. So as far as I'm concerned, it's very important to put them in. Now, not many people believe that I have 20, so I'm going to zoom through my 20. So first of all, these are the Cape honeybees, different colored scopa, depending on the plants that they've been to. Even the black ones from the Vehis that I saw in the middle. The next one, we're going to go through these fast, otherwise we'll be here forever. This is the male honeybee, which has a different story altogether. Very, very interesting. You only see them when they fall down after their mating sort of dance, so they're called a congregation when it's very hot, I've noticed. These are digger bees. As you can see, they're all very similar, very fast, and I have taken a great deal of photos to get to these at the plants. Not all of my plants underneath are, in fact, locally indigenous, but they were the ones that they were visiting at the time. But so we can just carry on through. Membrane greens are amazing. This Haleus heraldicus actually has a crop. It does not have scopa on them. And they actually regurgitate from their mouthpiece in order to condense the pollen in the wind. And the scrapter bees, and then the sweat bees, so-called, not very nice name because they apparently follow people when they are sweaty. I was very excited with this Lasioglossum bee the other day on my local purple Geranium incarnum, the pollen with its legs, which is absolutely amazing. Tiny, tiny, and I can't even pronounce it far on the far right, being caught by a crabflower spider in the African mint.
It's not that difficult. It's Mentha longifolia.
No, the name's the bean. Megachilidae, there are so many different species within these genuses, so we can just go through these, look at all the different types of stripes, and I can tell them, of course, when you photograph them a lot, they have different flight patterns, so that really helps. Anyway, then these guys, Lythurgus, the wood borer bee, maybe, Ben, I should start putting wood borer areas, but they do actually go into the one plant, which is Bauhinia, which I'm afraid comes from KZN, I think, but it's, very fascinating. And we've got a couple of, the other one was as well of a cuckoo bees. Do you want to go see something? Okay, and then these ones that we do recognize, which is our two carpenter bees, not bumblebees, they're in Europe. We have carpenter bees down here, and the very large Silo capitata that we have. And then it got me thinking about wasps. So I have also identified or uploaded 26 species of wasp, only 2 of which are invasive. So 24 are, and wasps take an enormous valuable place to eating our insects and bugs and various other, even some spiders as well. All hugely important. And here are just a photo of a few of them. And again, they're very varied. Anybody says when I show these pictures, oh my goodness, what an enormous sting. It's an ovipositor, it's a female. So I'll leave you with that thought. And this mud dauber here with the yellow legs here is actually still at this moment as well. She's come back and she makes a nest on the inside of our patio table whilst we're sitting there. Doesn't harm us. Then a friend of mine who is here, Jenny, even mentioned in January or whatever, the African wild mint's out, all the honeybees are visiting my mint. So I thought, I bet it's not just honeybees. So for 6 weeks, this is the entire extent of the mint bed, African wild mint, which is Menta longifolia, very next to my washing line. So when I hang it up, and I became, as my husband said, slightly obsessed over the next 6 weeks. And the list was here, which anybody I can give you a copy of it, which is, next slide, 3 insect species. Visited it. All on INAT photographs. I know the other 10 that have not been identified are correct. So there are 3 ants, 7 bees, 9 beetles, 11 bugs, 4 butterflies, 16 flies, grasshopper, moth, mantid, and 10 wasps. I saw a lot of wasps that I'd never seen before, plus a couple more of extra bees that I hadn't seen before. So yeah, ultimately it's the range of local plants that attract, and obviously I live next to Meadow Ridge Common and Rogers Park, which is another very interesting local area where there is untouched sort of vegetation there. And yeah, so it's other animals as well in my garden. As I said, all of these photos are from my garden. And so what did I say at the end? If I had my wish, on the next slide, I would love to, as I said, it started off with my children. I would love there to be a positive nature story for all children. There's a lot of mental health problems. And if we, as a collective, can change that round so that, and as David was saying, make positive stories for our children, that we can make a difference. There are all these insects. As we noticed in lockdown, everything came back when we didn't go out. And if the students could be encouraged to join local initiatives like all the friends groups, and even one lesson, it's a pity no one from cities here, to include Cape Town's locally adapted flora and fauna. It is just so important. And if local authorities could, in including the Residents Association, everybody, to include planting the local Western Cape Indigenous gardens, and development applications to be subject to planting locally indigenous landscaping would be fab. And there we go. So understanding is caring. So the more everybody understands about these things, from children upwards, the better. That was my experience, because I have an idea that actually from braiding sweetgrass is that humans are one of the last species on Earth. And as I do talks also on frogs, because that was another thing I did. I got into saving frogs in 2014. So now I'm on the board of Constantly Leopard Code Conservation Committee. That they've been around for 125 million years. They have actually got a full a fossil of a frog in someplace up in whatever, but the one in Langebarn is 5.1 million years old, and we are 200,000, I think. So the bees are telling us that every species is special. We do not just the honeybee. And the wasps are telling us not to focus on just the negative. There are 24 of the bee species are beneficial, and the insects are telling us all to maintain natural habitats for everybody. There we go. And if anybody wants that list of whatever, I can. 1,350 square meters, but I mean, the first part is a lot of its driveway, a lot of its house. So I would say that the picture, literally that picture at the beginning was the garden. Right. Not a lot.
Next up, we're going to have Stuart Hall. And Stuart, I met when he was still at school. And so, do you guys want to stand up while I talk, just to stretch, give your ass a little bit? We're going to be finished in about 20 minutes. So I met Stuart at school, and he was one of the most enthusiastic botanists I'd ever encountered. He was out in the fields, out in the suburbs, learning all the plants at the time, and he gave me a real run for my money 10 years his senior. So, Stuart, wonderful to have you here and still representing botany. He works for Capensis, which is an EIA organization, a company that does EIAs predominantly. But Stuart is here today to represent Rondebosch Common and Super. I'll cue that now.
So hi everyone, I'm going to talk about Rondebosch Common in terms of its site importance and then also some restoration work that's been done over the last while and some of the results of the findings of that restoration work. This site is really valuable as an area of natural habitat. It's not far from here. It's about 30 hectares in size. It has approximately 296 indigenous plant species, although I'm in the process of just updating that list. I think there's a few things that have been seen more recently that haven't been included. And about 1/3 of the species on the common are geophytes, so bulbous species, and then about 1/10 are annuals, and about 1/20 of the species. So the habitat. And in another site, there's a bit of Cerurea amula, these little plants here. It's quite overgrown. These bushes are old and they should really burn. Surprisingly, this part of the common doesn't seem to have burned since the planting was done. So it'd be interesting to see whether they seed and come back after a fire goes through here. So as I mentioned, Leucadendron levisanus and Cerurea amula, two critically endangered species that were successfully re-established on the common through these older plantings and have persisted for all this time. Then more recently, in 2017, there was the Morea aristata project. So this was a geophyte reintroduction that took place on the northwestern side of the common. The species is also critically endangered and only known in the wild from the observatory site, although it is in cultivation. So that's established very successfully, and every year since they've planted, they've flowered. So then more recently, in the middle of the common and also towards the edges, there's a couple of sites that were planted up. You can see some of the shrubs that have established there. And then next slide. And then here towards the eastern side of the common, there's more of that Cerurea amula. A couple of other species also, Proteus scolymocephala. It's not so easy to see there, but some good diversity and structural and species diversity that's been restored in these areas. Next. More recently also towards the southwestern side of the common, planting's been done in that area. Next. So a combination of bringing in more pioneer shrub species just to get more denser vegetation to compete with the alien grasses that are abundant on the common. So that's Athanasia chrysmifolia. Also to provide habitat and for more sensitive species to establish. So along with threatened species, these restoration plots have also helped to restore functional habitat. So, for example, this wetland towards the eastern side was excavated to allow water to pool there more than it would have before, and then certain species were planted in there. Next. So yeah, so from these more recent efforts to examples of threatened species, again the Cerurea amula and Proteus scolymocephala, and then Erica turgida, which was extinct in the wild, but there were some plants in cultivation at Kirstenbosch. It was found adjacent to Kenilworth Racecourse, and some plants were planted there as well as at Lower Takai, and more recently now at Rondebosch Common. So there's at least 10 plants that I found that have established quite nicely. So in conclusion, yeah, 9 species of conservation concern have been boosted or established on the common through planting efforts. 5 of these species were not present on the common before planting. So there's 3 endangered species, the one vulnerable Proteus scolymocephala, and then the extinct in the wild Erica turgida. So this is also another site, Meadow Common further south, much smaller than Rondebosch Common and generally not in as good condition, but there's still, I think, about 140 species or maybe a bit more that have survived on this site. So there hasn't been any restoration other than removing some of the pine trees, and there was an effort to try and burn the common a few years ago, but that hasn't happened yet. But what did happen is there was a fynbos circle that was planted by Fynbos Life in the last 2 years. So next slide. So that's actually established very nicely. This is a combination of species that are present on the common as well as species that were historically recorded, quite a number of threatened species. And so this gives a good representation with interpretation of what species should be found in the area, with an idea to then expand this outwards and use these plants as source material to restore these species more widely on the common. So yeah, there's been some progress on both sites in terms of enhancing conservation. So, yeah.
So my name is Alfredo Reinaldo Lobo das Neves, but you can just call me Ray, and I'm representing Friends of Ottery Field. So I established Friends of Ottery Field back in 2019. It was actually a bit of reaction to, there was an informal settlement that was then made to be formalized. And part of the plan was to then just expand it increasingly. And I said, no, I'm not having any of this. So I started Friends of Ottery Field because I understood the field from a young age. I would walk across that field when I came home from school. And I was more into the birds at that time. I didn't know my plants. But I knew that there was a connection between plants and animals. So when it came to this whole situation where there was the meeting and then subsequently forming Friends of Ottery Field, I made it my mission to actually learn the plants, learn the base of that pyramid. And COVID was actually a little bit of a blessing in that regard, because I got to make observations and learn about the plants and read up. And as soon as the spring walks happened again, I mean, I remember that one September, I just went on a walk every single weekend, trying to gather as much information as I could. And then, obviously, when Fynbos Life opened its doors on August 8th, 2021, I was there like a rocket. Won that Erica in the raffle, I remember that. But that then solidified my interest in Fynbos. And it was very pivotal for me, because subsequently I then joined the retail team in March the following year. And I was just getting more and more interested and invested in providing, I think of learn it as if you're going to teach it, so that everyone at some point didn't know what they know now. So if you impart that knowledge, you empower them to take action. So I believe like the first step should be observation. The power of observation and learning what's there, like an invasive, or something that is correct, like a nation needs to be taken. So then in Ottery Field's case, sorry?
Ed, I'm still struggling here. I can peek it across, but...
Okay. So sorry about the technical difficulties. So Ottery Field is a 41-hectare piece of land that if you were traveling from the M5 and you're going to the Ottery hypermarket, it will appear on your left. It's largely been seen as just a piece of land, grassland. But when you venture into it, you actually find there are multiple species, both in terms of the number of species of plants and the life that's there. The amount of insects and frog life and birds is absolutely amazing. It fortunately has always been too wet to build on. And that's its saving grace. It has had a long history where it was originally agricultural land, and then let's see if we can get some stuff. Oh, that's some invasive hacking there.
So where do you want to start?
Can you get that map of Ottery Field, please?
Okay, area overview.
Well, actually, that's not a bad one, too. Apologies for the technical difficulties.
Here we go. My word. This time I know what to do at least. Boom. Yep. Okay, we're back.
Okay, so actually this is a good overview. So you got, that's Kenilworth Racecourse, which had the luxury of, when the racecourse was built in 1881, they accidentally preserved the Cape Flat sand fynbos that was inside there. It was then subsequently made into a conservation site, which it is today. Then you got Young's Field, which is looking terrible at the moment with all the Port Jacksons that have taken over. That's the Royal Cape Golf Club, which has got some species in the little islands, but of course it's a golf club, so there's too much grass. And then this is Ottery Field, and there are some satellite areas, but a lot of them are being eyed by the city for construction and development. But the field itself has always maintained this seasonal wet condition. So this is a nice example of the different felt types. So you've got the Cape Flat sand fynbos. This is the historical range. This is what's left. And you can see there, that's the field. So you've got 4 seasonal wetland, 4 seasonal ponds, and then the amount of life that finds a way here is incredible, because it actually acts a bit like a stepping stone as well, especially for your bird species, because some will migrate north-south and others go east-west, depending on the species and what they are looking for. So it's actually quite phenomenal what comes to the field, and how important it could be for different species to stop off there. Yeah, and the comment often is, was this taken on the field? And it's like, yes, I didn't have to go to any park or anything. This is right my backyard. I can see these things come in, land, and do all they need to do. So we've got at least 5 confirmed frog species. There's possibly 6, but I just couldn't find it. So leopard toads and the flat dainty frog is the two ones that are of most priority. But there's loads of sand frogs, and it's actually come July, August, that place just sings with life. So it's one of those things where if you're paying attention to what's there, you can notice a whole host of different things to appreciate. And also the whole thing of, one of the comments that I can say specifically for pinelands is, you might have species here that's not necessarily prevalent where I am, which is not necessarily prevalent where Rondebosch is. So if you have something that you know as it's common here, it might not be common everywhere else. So it's something to look out for and cherish, and even champion. So if you could go to that Oxalis picture, that's it. Okay, so Oxalis minuta is my star, because the next population that you find is there's a little bit below Kirstenbosch Gardens, and the next lot is like somewhere out towards Paarl. So the fact that we have this flower is something quite wonderful. And it's not just a small little group. Come that where it's wet season, you see that bed of Oxalis flowers, and it's absolutely wonderful to see. So if anything I can say is that, I'm just interested now to see which one. Okay, so actually this is another thing. So champion your young stars. This is Leo, and he is absolutely crazy about frogs. And he raised for his 8th birthday that tree popper, which meant that I was able, I've been taking out Port Jacksons out of that field for a while, and I'm telling you, a second Port Jackson, a second puller means that you've got more ammunition to get the invasives out, which opens the way for natives to come back in. So remember, everywhere was once wild. You have the power to restore it. Thanks.
Through.
Okay,
Yeah.
So, I've also known a long time, but I think that's getting a tired old meme. Take your seat there, madam, at the helm, and you can bring it up as well. I think you can find your picture. And in these areas. And James, who lives with me, James goes and collects seeds as a volunteer, and he goes and brings them back, and they propagate plants, not just by seed, but by cuttings as well. And those seed then get sold at the retail nursery there. So it has such an incredibly pivotal role. Are you ready? Just press back one. Backspace. There we go. It's such a pivotal role, and crucial to the rehabilitation of the areas. But also, it's something. It's a product. It's a model that can be taken not just throughout South Africa, but throughout the world. Having satellite nurseries in all the different areas, propagating their local plants. So something so critical. Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you, Dave. So yes, I'm acting managing director because Caitlin, who started Fynbos Life, is seriously ill. She has stage 4 cancer and is going to be out for the next year at least. So she has got chemo to go, and then she has 4 major surgeries next year. And she is a phenomenal botanical ecologist, and she is exceptionally connected to many of you. But yeah, this is the opportunity now to diversify. And I come from an education background. I worked with Caitlin at WESA, and then we went our own separate ways, and then I stopped teaching full-time 3 years ago, and I bumped into Caitlin, and she said to me, I'm looking for someone to run the education section of Fynbos Life. And I said, oh, cool, I can do it. And anyway, 3 years later, here we are. And yeah, so Caitlin is the brains behind everything, and at the moment, I'm rolling out the stuff that that Fynbos Life does. And so we are like an umbrella organization. We have, I'm very lucky actually to have many people in the audience here that I work with. So Ray and Maddie, they work in the retail nursery. So it's a nursery open to the public, and you can come and buy plants according to your felt type. And so then they will educate you. Someone who has no idea about their felt type can come to our nursery and say, I live in Meadow Ridge, and they will guide you as to what plants will grow there. And then I work with Zoe, and Zoe and I are busy on a restoration project with sand parks, and we go out every Tuesday. Zoe went out today to go and collect seeds and cuttings, and we are going to then put 20, but we're going to, like in May, we're going to sow 24 kilograms of seed that we've collected and 12,000 plugs that we're propagating at the moment for a climate change restoration project that's been funded by the States, someone in the States. I was looking at the acronyms, the world of many acronyms. Anyway, so what else? So that's the propagation team, that's the retail nursery, and then we have an art arm, which we call Kuru Fynbos. And Kuru Fynbos, you might have seen, this is the Barber's Cape Flats Ranger butterfly. It's not a moth. Critically endangered. Its species, its habitat, the spear grass, is obviously hectically endangered. So Caitlin's brainchild is that in order to educate people, it must be exciting, and it must be like aesthetically pleasing, and it must be in public open spaces. And so Angela and her team, they create these kind of flagship species sculptures. And we have got 7 outdoor classrooms that we call felt circles all around the Cape Peninsula. And ideally, we're going to have 7 sculptures that will go into all the different felt circles. And so this was the Barber's Cape Flats Ranger. That was the first one that went in. And there's Caitlin when Tubu Tubu got put up. And and then Ange did another one. So we have another felt circle that's off Dordrecht Road. And that's the Cape Lowlands Wetland Felt Circle. And these are incredible Cape Galaxius fish. There are 3 of them. And obviously, you know, the Cape Galaxius fish used to be found low down in our waterways, but now they're only found much higher up. So it's a really good teaching opportunity for us to show kids that this used to be around, it's not around anymore. We also have bossies. Bossies is, like, say, for example, so for the Pinelands Wildflower project, if you wanted to fundraise and then you wanted to rehabilitate or kind of reintegrate locally indigenous vegetation onto your sidewalk, we would then facilitate that with our bossies arm. And so this is, so sidewalk planting essentially, and it's always community-driven, community-based, and these are just all pictures of different bossies plantings, and that's run by Helen Mitchell, and so you can see that we never want to come and take like an existing sort of space that already has function, but there are a lot of dead spaces where it's just grass or nothing's happening. And so that's what bossies does. And because it's locally indigenous plants that are genetically strong, they've all been sourced within a 5-kilometer radius of the area, they will grow. And we plant according to the nature. So we're not obviously going to plant now in summer. We'll plant, most of our planting happens in May, June. And then once you put the plants in, you just see it a year later, spaces that were dead, that had nothing going on there, are flourishing. So that's a good example. Very, very, very important that it's in public open spaces because, okay, and then so how I kind of came on the scene was Caitlin asked me to run, this is our retail nursery, sorry, there's Erin, and so Erin runs the retail nursery. And then how I came on the scene was I run Funda Fynbos, okay? Now Funda means to learn in Xhosa Zulu, but it's very important that the kids learn through fun. And so I run a program where I'm funded to take children from like local schools or local organizations and take them out into nature and try and teach them about Fynbos. And so these are the kids learning to propagate. They come to our nursery and they propagate there. They get to do like soft cuttings, and they also get to smoke seeds, which is pretty epic. And because very few people get to actually even see the process of smoking seeds. I mean, how many of you in this room have actually seen a seed smoker? And Caitlin actually just took an old toilet and she turned it into a smoker, So the kids sow the seeds, and a very, very, very cool thing was Sweet Valley sowed grass, a particular type of grass seed, and then it got put into one of our most recent felt circles in town. So it was like a whole thing. They could see how they played a part in this whole process. And these are the kids that come to our felt circles, and we do a lot of art with them. I've worked with kids from all different backgrounds, and we have made it intentionally not CAPS aligned. I found as a teacher that the minute you try and align an education program according to CAPS or any form of curriculum, the shutters just come down. So it's like incidental learning, and I'm trained in like neuroplasticity, sort of like cognitive learning, and the fact that like once you take a child and put them into a safe space and they feel relaxed, that's when you can do your most important work. And a lot of environmental education is expert, and we've deliberately fought against that. And so most of our funding goes towards transport, where we can get the kids out of their environments and outside into our felt circles. So so we do art. I trust them with secateurs, and I say to them, you can go and pick plants, you can go and pick flowers, but you have to think about your want versus an animal's need. So that's like a really powerful teaching tool, that they want to create this beautiful card and they want to go and cut coneflowers off the leucodendrons, but then to say to them, maybe not. What else? We do restoration. So there's obviously pure restoration. We do restoration, rehabilitation, and reintegration. From a scientific perspective, restoration is a very specific type of work. And then this is kind of rehabilitation. We do various rehabilitation projects. And that's mostly funded by private individuals who have this desire to then, sort of regenerate a space.
About 1 minute.
Okie dokie. That's an aerial view of one of our felt circles. It's circular, designed around the mandala, and the concept that everything is interconnected. And that's the kids. So actually, we're just about to upload a document on our website that shows you where all the 7 felt circles are around Cape Town. And if you go to all 7 felt circles and send me photographic evidence, I will give you 7 plants at the end of January. So, But it is definitely about maintaining a network, and we work with people from Belgemut and from SIDS and MIDS and all over, and yeah, you have to just keep on like working hard and making sure that you connect with people. And I got some really, really good advice from someone saying that the city is actually just a name. There are individuals within the city, and if you view it as like the city is the enemy, you're going to get nowhere. So you have to like try and identify who the champion is in your area, and once you've made a relationship with that person, and once you treat them actually like they're quite clever, then they will probably respond. Cool.
So our last speaker is Tom from WESA, and WESA is South Africa's oldest NGO.
I think so.
I think
It's unfortunately not where it actually should be at the moment. So let me just give you a little bit of a history here. I started with the Friends of Sikifle and Rondafle in about 2008. And in July 2021, we had a massive, massive sewage spill that wiped out a whole bunch of biodiversity. So what we did is we reported the city to the Green Scorpions, and that process took about 2 years or so, but we eventually nailed them. And there is nobody here from the city, is there? Okay. Long story short, they must pay 180 million rand to rehabilitate the problems that they caused through the Cape Flats wastewater treatment works, not functioning at all. What they do now is they turn around and they have a spin on it that they're doing the biggest rehabilitation plan in Africa, right? So that's unfortunately what it is that we're dealing with. So I've been to a couple of these WESA Big Friends groups meetings, and there are a lot of friends groups. There are friends groups and their friends groups. A couple of big organizations that have got big areas, Ramsar sites, to a little street corner. And at these Big Friends groups meetings, I sort of heard a lot about people saying, and I have heard it here tonight also, that they don't know who to speak to, they don't know where to go with the problem. Everything just seems like a closed door. So what WESA is doing now is on the 21st of February next year, we're going to be having a Big Friends a Big Friends meeting, where we're going to have a couple of panelists. There will be city officials there, probably the mayors, Zaid Badruddin, Alex Lansdowne, people that actually can do something and can listen to us. But it became very aware, I became aware that the city is a big faceless monster, and it is very easy for these officials to not listen to you, to say that they're going to get back to you, etc., etc. Our big sewage spill that we had in July 2021 was the best thing that ever happened to us as the Friends of Sikifle and Rondafle. Really got us on the map, and it forced a dialogue with the city, not just the politicians, but with the city staff also. And now we've actually changed the way, from a Friends of Sikifle and Rondafle point of view, we have changed the way that we do business with the city. We don't fight with them, right? We do obviously take them to task when they promise something that they don't deliver on. But we generally have a working relationship with them. And I think that that's where a hell of a lot of friends groups actually fall down, right? As soon as you start talking to a city official, or even a politician, which is a lot worse. If you haven't got that open communication, and if they can't see that you are, I mean, let's put it this way, all of us in this room, I think, are unpaid volunteers, right? And I think that the mayor is starting to understand the value that, okay, friends groups and, well, okay, anybody that is helping to make a difference is actually making. So to that end, WESA is going to be putting another big friends group, okay, meeting together. Okay, like I said, Feb 21st, please save the date. And we're going to have a discussion on how to actually deal with the city, how to get the results that you need, right? Whether it is, okay, mowing of verges or, okay, any issue. But I really think that if as a collective we go to the city and we say to them, this is what it is that we want, and we've got to use the structures that, you know, have been made available to us, like the Protected Areas Advisory Committees, like the recently formed catchment management forums. These are legislated bodies where people have to listen to us, right? The city has to listen to us. They don't have to do what it is that we say, that we recommend, but they definitely have to listen. And they also know that if they don't listen to us, well, then that makes it look like they have created a sort of, you know, these puppet organizations that just make them look good. So there's a lot of, okay, political sort of wrangling behind it all, but I think that with the mayor that we've got now, I think that we are in the best position, okay, now that we can tap into the mayoral priority program for waterways and wetlands, and that, as far as I'm concerned, also looks at, you know, other areas also. So I really ask all of you to come to the WESA function, and there are going to be people there that really know their stuff, that have been fighting or working with the city for a long time, and I'm sure that we can all learn everything from them. So, okay, can I share the details with you, and you can share it with, with everybody else? So awesome. Okay, thanks, guys. And we look forward to seeing you in Feb.
I want to just thank everyone for coming tonight. To the speakers, thank you so much for putting on a really scintillating series of talks. For those of you who've sat through the 2 hours, amazing. I really appreciate it. And for those listening on the screen, thank you. Special thanks to Friends of Pinelands Wildflowers for hosting us, for putting this on, and to all those people who have stepped up and come and spoken. The format was meant to be a rapid-fire 5-minute talks with a dialogue with experts up at the front. At least that's how I envisaged it. But the talks were going so well, so apologies to the experts, but things had to be said. And I think that a lot of ground was covered, which was really what I wanted to convey, was there's these organizations out there doing absolutely phenomenal stuff, both organizations and individuals. And the call is for each one of you to step up and to do just that. So in that vein, I wish to leave you with a little reading, as I started out with. And this is a call for femininity rather than the more masculine, like, fighting approach. And so again, from Braiding Sweetgrass, Robin Wall Kimmerer, she peers inside a bunch of reeds in a wetland, and she finds in there 3 eggs the size of lima beans lying in a circlet of pine needles. So this made her think, and she thought, it came to me once again that restoring a habitat, no matter how well-intentioned, produces casualties. We set ourselves up as arbiters of what is good, when often our standards of goodness are driven by narrow interests, by what we want. I piled the cut brush back up near the nest in some semblance of the protective cover I had destroyed and sat on a rock, concealed on the other side of the pond, to see if she would come back. What did she think as she watched me come closer and closer, laying waste to the home she had carefully chosen, threatening her family? There are powerful forces of destruction loose in the world, advancing inexorably toward her children and mine. The onslaught of progress, well-intentioned to improve human habitat, threatens the nest I've chosen for my children as surely as I threatened hers. What does a good mother do? And I think that's the message I would like to leave for all of you here, is we're all mothers in our own way. And we all have that feminine integrated within us. And the call is, what does that feminine ask of us, each one of us? How do we protect and nurture that which is our own, if not through love? And that's the message that I have coming from Casa Bio, an organization that's around documenting plants and animals, and that is fomenting that connection of love. So thank you all. Thank you for bringing your minds here. Thank you for bringing your hearts here. And I look forward to meeting you all in person. Good night and farewell.